Good, where are we? Good afternoon.
Go first.
Come on, we've been here a few times. Good afternoon. There we go. I've got two incredible gentlemen coming to join me on stage. So come on up, Christian from RIKAS and Josh from EatX. The really cool thing here is that, and I specifically asked these guys to join me because they are both involved in, I think, what can really be described as two of the hottest, coolest, hippest, whatever the modern term is, restaurant businesses in Dubai. But both of them have previously worked in hotel businesses, so it gives them a relatively unique view. And I guess that's going to be my first question. So we, relatively tongue-in-cheek, created the title, as you see, why are restaurateurs from Venus and hoteliers from Mars? So my first very angled question is, so were you a Martian that now happens to live on Venus? Or were you and I had to look up this word, a Venetian that is now living on Mars? So where is your real heart?
You go first.
I didn't give them any questions.
Thank you very much, James. And I think first and foremost, obviously, in regards to form that rather interesting headline of Mars and Venus. We are obviously not scientists. We are not innovators of science and wanting to go to Mars or Venus. I think we strive with great passion. I think from having had the opportunity in life to come through both of the channels, from Mars or Venus, and let's maybe switch down to the reality of our world. And AI will support us, hopefully, or if not, I think there's a massive shift change in the way of food and beverage. I think we've all seen, and I really tried to go back a little bit. I might not look that old, but go back around 34 years ago, where we looked at those amazing hoteliers running those restaurants and trends.
At kindergarten?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. But it's really looking at it. I think there's been a major shift change, and I think truly so, and excitingly so. The hotelier business, I think where I want to get to is really those are two different business models nowadays, but they already existed before. And I think we go back again many years ago, where some of the hoteliers who really put, and I say, the money where their mouth is, focusing on food and beverage, they were very good. And I think looking at groups like Hyatt Group, looking at still up to Four Seasons, and I think we're sitting in one property where I had personally the pleasure to be part of, very strong in the initial stage. But I think they also have started realizing, and I do hope they have started realizing from an ownership level as well, from an operator level, if it's owned and operated or managed and operated, the food and beverage industry is more than just feeding people. And with that evolution, I think Venus was born. And then to really give over to my counterpart, Josh, a little bit as well, and I think I'm extremely humbled and honored to be part of an incredible group which was founded by an incredible visionary, Rizwan, who has brought a concept called La Cantine de Faubourg all the way from Paris to Dubai in 2015, and where there was one concept, there are 16 different concepts/brands today, which are not just, again, feeding people, which really create experiences, but ready for the international stage as such, operating through 19 different locations, 5 more coming this year. So as I have explained and gone through that journey, I think we've seen it isn't just anymore having passion of one restaurant. It is a model in itself which actually contributes to the other model. And I think that's my last message. Hoteliers really change your culture, change your thinking. We are here to support, to make your world better, and we will support it ultimately with thriving that.
So it all went downhill at Jura after you left, and they should really give you a call at RIKAS. Is that the kind of undertone?
Well, either way, listen, I don't want to force it. I think it's either way. I think it's have the heart in your right place and drive it. But which camp do you want to be in? You know, it's either or. You can be in the corporate camp, which is hospitality in its core of hotel rooms, commercial business, residences, and many others, which we've kept hearing in sessions. Or be really in that, and I think I'm fortunate again, coming from an operational background with the heart, once a chef, always a chef, but still sits in you and will continue this way. And I found, and I'm thankful to the world, where it has gone to have found that spot in life where you can do what you love to do. It's not a job, it's passion, it's driven.
You managed to take my poking and managed to reply with a very good political answer. So thank you and congratulations. So
Thank you.
I do like to tease. It at least makes a little bit of humour for the audience. So over to you, Josh. And don't worry, yours is coming too. So.
I think it's difficult not to echo some of what Christian said. So EatX is a homegrown company that I work for now. However, my first professional job in the hospitality world would have been back in London, where I was F&B marketing manager for a solo hotel called the Bloomsbury. And like, what does an F&B marketing manager do? Like, that was interesting in itself, because then at that stage, hotels were starting to take F&B a little more seriously and starting to treat F&B like its own separate entity, which I think is really, really important. Jeremy King, restaurateur, like famously said that hotels are the ultimate expression of hospitality, and I somewhat agree with that. So I suppose I do kind of sit on the fence where I love restaurants. I think that restaurants are so much fun. Working in a restaurant environment, I think, is a lot more fun than working in a hotel environment, personally. Hotel gives you that level of like kind of inclusivity across a much broader team. You get involved in lots of different areas. Yeah, like I think the homegrown scene in Dubai is quite exciting to keep an eye on as well, and how companies like RIKAS have evolved, and the parasociety relationships, and how different groups are relating into hotels and integrating in that sense is pretty cool.
It's interesting. I have quite a similar background in terms of my career journey. I've been, I guess, a little schizophrenic in this respect. So I started off in family restaurants, moved to five-star hotels, and have been back and forth ever since. And it's fascinating that I did go over to rooms division at one point and realised that bedrooms are really boring, right? Well, I guess they're kind of not, but the only thing you can do in bedrooms that's interesting, you can't put on social media. So it's all the stuff on the ground floor that really makes the heartbeat of the hotel. And I think to your point, my view is I always felt like I was walking out on stage, walking into a restaurant as a maitre d' and so on. It's almost that, it's the closest thing to theatre that I think you can get.
But I think this is also, what you said, James, I think this is where the business model is very different. Listen, it's a different business model, it's a different concept of how to do things. I think there's a couple of core pillars, and I want to really write out for the hoteliers in here as well, who believe we are paying double salaries for our talent. I think there's a different business model between hotels with a different focus. Hotels are focusing obviously on engine-driven maximizing stay and ultimately ADR. And what do we really focus on is creating experiences, but not experiences within the venue, but with experiences within the community. And I think, whoever was part of the earlier morning panel, even our founder has alluded on it. You know, for us, we do operate in hotels. We do operate under great management agreement structures, which will retain that way. But the hotel business we ultimately have in our venues is a maximum of 5%. And then that's truly out. And that's not just on multiple examples, but what we add to the hotel or to the real estate, because everybody's driving towards commercial, towards residences and all the different models, we drive energy. And I think that's where then the activation of that business model is very different. We focus on experiences, not on systematic sets, on maximizing rates, average stays, and so on. And I think it is a business which is a giant in itself, and so is ours now. So I think that's where that Mars/Venus, as you want to go back, meets itself in between. And if you have true strong concepts which have entity, which have a story, we heard just earlier a lot about story. Story can be either boring and very long. You don't need to tell the story. The story is told through all your creation, the build, the structure of that concept, and then sticking to it, reflecting it, and building it through. And you know, we've got some incredible examples. Nineve as an example. I can tell you a story for the next 5 minutes, most probably, but it's not about that story. It's about that story of experience, and that's paired with just absolute preciseness. And again, ruling out, like I said, talent earlier. a lot of developers, a lot of owners, a lot of hotel operators believe you guys ask for all those millions and you're double that expensive in building a venue. No, we don't necessarily actually do it. Let's work together in partnership because that's our drive, and we know how to quickly do it, faster activate and be relevant to the community around you. And I think that's really where the big difference lies.
I feel the talent component of a restaurant is incredibly important, and who you're attracting to work in there and how they're looking at customers as they come in. I think hotels are different in the context of you know what that guest is going to pay before they've walked in the door, so you've already got a preconceived idea. A restaurant, if you're thinking about how much that guest is going to pay like the second they arrive and see them as a value, like that's all wrong. It should be a democratic approach where anyone can be whoever they want in that moment, and you have 2 or 3 hours to give them an unbelievable experience, which is where these, the front of house skill really comes in. They need to nurture the right audiences, the right people. They need to, identify who are the tables to focus on and to drive the spend per head. It's not going to be everyone, but it's kind of interpreting what kind of experience they want to have on that day, which I think is really, really interesting and quite different.
And good talent, talent can be built through training, but I think good talent is also built through culture. And the culture starts with the top, and again, leadership from the top down. And culture attracts more people, correct? And culture attracts consumer experiences to be very good. And I think the credit, and I focus really on the RIKAS group at the moment is really having an incredible base of loyal followers who do enjoy the experiences they get through all the multiple concepts, and from the Middle Eastern to the North African to the French chic, but then equally going into a Greek, going into a Spanish. And that attracts obviously customers, that attracts good atmosphere and feel. And I think that's where we as restaurateurs are very quicker in reacting things. We make decisions. We don't necessarily look at resumes. We look at characters. Where the difference sits potentially to the hotel, from my experience, it's very silo-driven. It's very departmental-driven. It's very budget-driven. And bringing me to the point I really want to get to is it's the financial success of a freestanding operator from a top line, which is the key focus to drive. Top line makes everything, correct? And how many times have I been in hotels? And that's one of the big reasons. And thank you to, again, Rizwan catching me in. It has eaten me in the inside. We all had those great revenue expectations, but ultimately it was about GOP. And you were put into this corner where some of those earlier mentioned elements were not in place. Agile, quick, identity, and everything else. And what do? You slash the most important, which is talent, or you start reducing and modeling it, which then reflects back to customers. So the formula is very simple, actually. I think we sometimes over-talk it and overcomplicate it. And have a vision and have a leader. That's key in every segment, in operations, in PR, marketing.
Yeah, and I think what we find at EatX and how my role has, suppose, evolved over the last year is this obsession over the product, over the guest experience. And obviously, marketing is fundamentally 4 Ps, and product being absolutely essential in the city. Like, if the food is not good, and if the experience of the guests from a front of house perspective is not good, then we can bring in the most amazing customers, like high spenders, like the great and the good of the industry, whether it's top PR people or brand leaders. But then if they have a terrible experience, then they're never going to come back. They're never going to tell their friends. So it's really important to scrutinize all those elements of the business. And like Christian was saying, having that flexibility to evolve the product, to change your opening hours, to tweak the menu, to change your price point, to make sure that you're moving as the whole market is moving, or your local competition, I think is very important, which hotels may have various layers to approve. That slows things down, and then before you know it, you're 3 months behind decisions that could have been made very quickly.
I think that's actually one of the key points that I want to make. I mean, working on a project at the moment, we talked about it, not going to name the company, and actually for these types of things didn't exist, frankly, I wouldn't be great as a consultant. So but what is interesting is that the process that we've gone through to help develop food and beverage for one group, relatively big group, has meant that we've ended up working with 135 stakeholders internally within their business and GMs of properties and so on. And that process is going to take 18 to 20 months to complete. And of course, within that process and that time, what you're really seeing is a continued evolution. And almost every 6 to 8 weeks, when you present an updated version, you're having to update what's changing alongside. And it just strikes me that actually that nimbleness is where the value sometimes sits within these types of restaurant-first operators. What is interesting...
In 18 months, I think we've been able to achieve, we will hopefully be able to achieve around another 15 openings, so that's okay. Or brand growth as such, so I wish you luck there.
Yeah, that wasn't my timeline, by the way, let's be clear here. What is interesting is I mean, and of course, let's be clear here, the name of the title is purposely trying to get you in the room. I mean, we clearly all don't believe that restaurateurs are the only people that can run venues, right? But what is interesting, if you had to kind of build up a camp, I think that we talk a lot within the work we do around food and beverage strategy of this divergence in food for experience on one side and then food for fuel or the convenience on the other side. And it strikes me that actually, there are still lots of occasions within hotel businesses where it is an entirely convenience-focused occasion, and actually, generally, hotel companies do very well at that. More broadly, you can tick the box, and it's interesting that on a broader level, we work with large QSR businesses, we work with businesses that are doing grab and go at lunchtime. There's nothing wrong with being convenience-focused, and you can deliver an experience within a convenience-focused occasion. But it's interesting that on the experience-focused occasion, I think that, there are luxury hotels and some premium hotels I think do it really well. But I guess when you're coming down the run, that's where it starts to often unstick, is when you're seeing budget mid-scale hotels trying to do something more experiential and not necessarily being able to deliver on it. Would you agree, disagree?
Yes and no. I think the world equally is evolving there, and I think we are very well witness of it, and I think really an incredible partnership we have entered beginning of this year with Enismo, and I think it's that lifestyle element, it's the connectivity of lifestyle, but it isn't just about hospitality lifestyle. I think it's lifestyle around fashion. It's about where we hang out, where we go for shopping, where we purchase. And I think we do see in the early days as such, and I have been quite a while around in the, call it hospitality as a broader word. I have not come across anybody than our new partner Enismo. And when you look at Enismo as itself, they are behind Paris Society, which is, I was 20 years or 15 years ago, 16 years ago, I was looking at them like, wow, those guys are incredible. But Enismo has taken that as a hospitality or hotel owner-led operator, which I think the biggest key and the difference they make really is the founders and the owners are retained within the business, not as a figure, to drive that business arm of that brand. They're not brand hunters, they're not just brand representatives, they're truly making an impact. And again, I think that's where food and beverage, we all recognize that what works in Dubai might not necessarily work in London or in New York or in Hong Kong exactly the same way. And when I look at business development within the group, and it's not about looking at what I do here, I do exactly there. I have to adjust, and I have to be understanding of as far as I can go, and ultimately retain the brand DNA. And I think back to this Enismo, and we've been fortunate to join forces and have them as an incredible partner from all different aspects, and they come with Paris Society. So now Paris Society as a restaurant, absolutely innovator, driver within the French market, and putting both of those forces together, what an experience, I tell you. It's not just an experience, it's truly leveraging the strengths to strengths and then back into hotels. And I see that when I approach now other hotel brands. It doesn't need to be just luxury, I want to really say. It's lifestyle is growing, and the young generation looks at it totally different than we might have looked at it 20 years ago. So I think it's going with the wave, and I've seen it on a panel this morning where I thought you had the good old classic hotelier, and then you had that cool, innovative guys, and there is a clash. There's a clash of those two sections, and I think one or the other will need to step and find the middle way of this.
And from your perspective, Josh, I mean, are you guys looking at hotel opportunities within EatX? Is that part of your plan?
There are various conversations that go on that Tom and the group have and the investors have. At the moment, it's a focus on what we have in Dubai, but there are various conversations in the pipeline with various different routes of expanding, not just with hotels, but in different ways. But I think it's a perfect recipe in terms of what Accor, Ennismore, Paris Society, and RIKAS have achieved. I think having experts that are there at the end of the phone who can just say, no, actually, building a 300-cover restaurant in this location is a really bad idea. And then people that will actually listen to it, I think, is incredibly valuable, because you see it all too often where hoteliers are designing restaurants, they're building restaurants, the guest experience is a little bit patchy. You have this huge space to fill, which is incredibly difficult. And if you don't have a vibe, that's not going to attract more people and all of that. So I think like in an earlier stage when the asset is getting signed off, then having that input from the restaurant expert side is hugely valuable. Yeah, it makes sense.
It strikes me, though, that the elephant in the room with this stuff, in terms of as we say, often the asset's owned by someone else. Often this is what's quite interesting in that scenario is that just because somewhere suits a hotel doesn't mean it suits a incredibly experiential or vibey restaurant. And actually, the challenge often is, I was chatting with someone last night who was at the very, very pointy edge of this, saying, we've got development arms that are hugely incentivized to go and sign deals for this very large brand. And we have to pick it up at the back end from an F&B standpoint, and that a lot of these venues aren't well suited to what we need as a restaurateur. Yet actually, I mean, I'm the greatest one in the world. I guess with a RIKAS hat on, you guys are, to a degree, able to pick the projects that you want and don't want within those environments. You're not being forced to go into a unit somewhere that's completely not where you'd want to be, right? So how does that work through?
I don't think, James, I don't think it's about picking and choosing. I think every business is built on partnerships, and I think the more you strengthen the partnership, and as I said earlier, in Ennismore, as it's really innovative arm as a founder-led business model under Accor and having Paris Society alongside, it's about being able to complement and being able to contribute. And I think respect to the leadership of Ennismore, Gaurav, Louis, and the larger leadership of Accor is they've really realized it. And I think I mentioned at the start, put the money where your mouth is from both aspects. And I think between both of the sides. And I think it's being able, and we all recognize, we all desire, correct? We all go out, we all live on emotions of experiences of sound, light, music. The light here, by the way, is horrible. So I think the emotions are not very good. So I think it's really driven on this, and I think that group has done that. And equally on the other side, I'm really focusing, and we're talking to multiple other operators, which are owned hotels, owners, and we're talking to other brands, as an example, Four Seasons. We are in progress of finalizing things, is to create destination experiences. And as I said at the start, the concept is very different. Hotels focus on average stay, ADR, and now if you bring a food and beverage experience with its all values, as mentioned earlier, alongside, you actually drive greater value, not just for that spot, and that would be 95% of your community coming to you, and the 5% from what sits on the top of you, but you're driving ultimately an energy value, you're driving a desirability value for people to visit you, and then you start adding components of retail and so on. And what do you drive ultimately as well? And I think there's some great examples without any numbers ultimately, but Emirates Towers, I know people stay at Emirates Towers because they know La Cantina has been there for a long time. They know what they get, the traffic situation is mad and so on. And you drive ADR rate with it. And the beach club scenario, and I think we've mastered that quite strong and in a very clean direction with Twiggy, with Schema, who is with St. Regis. It's driving the value on the ADR. So you're really maximizing your spaces for the owners, and you're just feeding people for a certain meal period. So Simple. And I think that's what we bring to the table, and we will continue striving on it and focus on it.
We're just wrapping up, but 1 point from you each. So, of course, not everyone's going to be able to go and work with third parties and so on. But beyond that, what's one tip that you would give if someone's sitting here with challenges in food and beverage with a hotel hat on? What's the one thing that you think restaurateurs do differently that they should think about to change their mindset to help?
Why such a question? You didn't tell us about that.
Yeah.
No, listen. It's
Come on, some magic.
I keep it very simple. Listen, let's just step off. I can do it all. Let the different industry do, and the different models. We as restaurateurs and operators of such and creators of concepts and operators. That's our core, and I think we have got the trick on it, and I think that's what we do. We protect it, and we don't put long approval routes in between and bureaucracy. And I think just step back, do what you do best, maximize that. Let us form partnerships, and those partnerships will be to create the results of all different aspects.
Last word to you, Josh.
I think from my side, it's more of like, if you're a hotelier with a restaurant, like try and separate out the restaurant team as much as possible from the hotel team, because I think to install that mindset, to have that different focus, to look at a P&L very differently, to not flatten what you do. Like different restaurants need different PR agencies, they need different social approaches, they need different partnerships, they need to speak to different audiences in order to not cannibalize each other. I think that's really, really important, and that's where I found the most success in hotel groups is where they just think about it as its own little pod, which frees up to make quicker decisions, not so many people involved, and just a little bit of a cleaner approach, rather than always thinking about in-house guests first and foremost, which Christian rightly said is contributing maybe 5% of the footfall to the restaurant. So yeah.
So either unshackle them and let them do their thing, or bring someone else in. You've got your answer, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the day.